I've made a decision here with Donald Trump. You know, if I comment on everything he says, I mean, my whole campaign will be consumed by it.
Right.
And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. That was, of course, GOP presidential hopeful Marco Rubio speaking last month on Meet the Press, where he promised not to comment on frontrunner Donald Trump. Well, sometimes these things just don't work out quite the way you want. Here's the Florida senator just last week.
He takes shots at everybody that gets anywhere close to him, and does, you know, in terms of a poll, or anytime he hits a rough spot, that's what he does. He had a really bad debate performance last week. He's not well informed on the issues. He really never talks about issues and can't have more than a 10-second soundbite on any key issue. And so I think he's kind of been exposed a little bit over the last 7 days, and he's a very touchy and insecure guy, and so that's how he reacts, and people can see through it.
So is Donald Trump qualified to be president of the United States?
Well, as I said, I think that the most important thing a president will ever do is provide for the national security of our country. And I think up to now he hasn't really answered serious questions about national security. And until he does, there should be concerns, not just about him, but about any candidate that's not able to speak in detail, with clarity, and with seriousness about the national security threats that we face.
Okay, so sue him. While Rubio may not have been able to keep his pledges of avoiding the Trump tantrums, it looks like breaking the silence on Donald Trump is actually paying off for Senator Rubio after all, at least according to an NBC Wall Street Journal poll out earlier this week. Oh, we're going to read this, as you can see. Back in July, when Senator Rubio refused to buy into Trump's game, he had just 5% of Republican primary support. Now that he's all in, Marco Rubio has risen to third place with 11%. Meanwhile, support for Florida Governor Jeb Bush, I should say former Florida governor, has dropped in half since July, according to this poll. Now, certainly Rubio's rise in the polls can't just be written off to deciding to engage with Donald Trump. Jeb Bush has also spoken out against Donald Trump fairly regularly during his campaign, and it obviously hasn't done him any good. So, Bill Tucker, why is the Bush campaign doing so poorly?
Because the idea of a Bush-Clinton ticket, once again, is just absolutely not acceptable.
You really think that that's
Yes,
reason?
I do.
Yeah. Brad, you agree with that?
I think there's a lot of management issues in the campaign that you probably want to get to, and we should, but I think people are exhausted with the status quo. And as much as both Marco and Jeb are inside the political game, Bush, it's multiple generations, it's a different place to be, and I think people are just exhausted.
I want, both of you could be giving a perfectly good explanation, Joe, but I never really see that question, or I haven't, I should say, in a very long time in the polls. They're polling, what don't you like, what do you like, but I don't see that question anymore. Are you against Bush? Just because we don't want any more Bushes.
I'd like to see that question.
I would too.
Because
these guys might have it exactly right.
People don't pay attention the way we pay attention. They do not like the Bush brand. And to answer your question before, Rubio is ahead of Bush now by 4 points because Marco Rubio had 2 great debates.
He did.
And Jeb Bush had 2 very average, lifeless debates, and that's making the difference right now.
I think that's part of it. I do. Okay, well, what might be helping Donald Trump, along with some of the other outside candidates, is that 62% of Americans are upset with the direction the country is going in. On top of that, about 80% of Americans describe themselves as angry with the status quo, and that could speak to the point you guys were making. Anxious about the economy and their financial security, or both. This, again, according to the NBC Wall Street Journal poll. America is clearly not feeling very good about itself these days. So what do these candidates need to do to turn this around, Joe Concha? Is there anything that they can say or do that's going to start to make us feel better about us?
Donald Trump is doing it, right? He is at least saying, I can make America great again, we're not where we should be, and I'm the guy to do it. So that's why his message is resonating.
Well, okay, but Brad, Donald Trump is doing it. I think Joe's right about that, and he is certainly leading in the Republican polls. But at the same time, he has the highest disapproval rate. And that would tend to make you say, no, that's not what's necessarily doing it. He's making some people believe, but not enough.
And I think that's the key. It is making some people. Polarizing messages do exactly that. They polarize the populace. I don't think Americans are feeling bad about themselves. I think Americans are feeling bad about America.
Right.
And as a result, a piece of that America is saying, give me the Donald, I don't care about the specifics, just pump up my sense of who we are as a nation. And the others are saying, it's a dangerous thing, because if you don't know what you're looking for, you'll take any alternative.
Take anything that's a great point. Brad, I mean, are you hearing any candidate on any side, by the way, I'm not just talking about Republicans, who are actually laying out a blueprint where Americans can look at it sensibly and go, that might do the trick. And by the way, in that context, I'm going to give the Donald some points.
Right.
I thought that his tax proposal, I've got some issues with it, but and we haven't dug into it deeply. There were a few things that he suggested that aren't being suggested by anybody else I thought were really good, like cutting a break to small business just because they're small business.
No, I agree. But what's interesting to me is that the Republicans, a number of them, not just Donald, have laid out tax plans, have in fact laid out policy decisions that the newspapers seem to be ignoring and acting like, no, they're not really doing that. Bernie Sanders on the other side is one of those guys speaking in big, broad generalities.
Well, you're right. And hopefully we'll soon get to the substantive part. So who is your pick for the 2016 nomination? Let us know by going to newsmaxpolls.com. Let your voice be heard. And coming up next, America's trust in media, all-time low. Don't go anywhere.